I'm Adam Shokorn. We're in Fort Gansevoort. This is Patsy Rembert, widow, wife of Winfred Rembert. It's October 7th, 2021, and we're here for the exhibition of Winfred Rembert, 1945 to 2021. It's a great privilege and an honor to not only be amongst Winfred's masterful paintings, but it's an honor and a privilege to be with Winfred's widow, Patsy, who knew Winfred the man and Winfred the artist better than anyone. So I'm going to defer to Patsy and let Patsy get into some of the paintings so she could explain some of the family intricacies and other things. And we'll start down here on the ground floor and make our way up to the second floor and then to the third.
Now I'm going to explain this picture to you, Adam. This is Winfred at the age of 3 months. His mother had an affair whilst her husband was away in the army. And she had to figure out what to do with Winfred. So she decided that she would give Winfred to her great aunt. Now, Winfred was given away from, his mother was only 21 years old. She already had a child. And we don't know all the details, but she had to get rid of Winfred, so she gave him to her aunt. This is Candy Lee. Miss Candy Lee is JT's wife. That's who Winfred called Dad. This is Miss Lillian. Both girls are named Lorraine. So he grew up thinking she was his sister, not her. It was many years later before he found out that his mother had given him away.
This is a painting Winfred made titled The Beginning. It was made in 2002, which I like to think is somewhat of an early painting of Winfred's because his first painting started around the mid-90s, and then we get to a painting that he made even before 2002 from 1999 titled Miss Prather and Me, and maybe you could talk a little bit about
Now, the reason that he's looking in the book, Winfred couldn't read or write while he was in school. Couldn't read or write. Miss Prather would never call on him to make him stand out. She would walk around the desk and check and see what he was doing. It would always be drawing. He would be drawing. And that was his plight. He has a picture that's called The Book That Couldn't Be Read because he could not read the book because he only went to school 1 or 2 times a month. So he didn't get very much education in school.
What was Winfred doing when he wasn't going to school?
Yeah, well, he was hanging out, going to a place that's familiar with him, and I'll talk about that when I get to that picture.
For sure.
But he was just drawing and making things and with his hand. He's always been able to do things with his hands and make things, and that's what he would do. And then when he was not doing that, he was in the cotton fields. He was working in the cotton fields at a very early age, say 6, 7 years old. He was in the cotton field with a sack during school time.
It seemed like from Chasing Me to My Grave, when I read the book, it seemed like Winfred had developed a warm relationship with Miss Prather, and she had a special place in his heart for one reason or another. Yes. It seemed like she cared about him.
She cared about him, but she knew he wasn't able to come to school to learn. So she didn't want to make him embarrass him or anything. So she would just give him projects to do, like the bulletin board, things that he could do.
Right.
She would let him do.
Right.
Keep wood in the heater.
Right. Should we move on to Flower Bread?
This is a picture that depicts his mom, who we call Mom, which was Miss Lillian. Winfred's mom was allergic to flour. So she would put a mask on so she could make cakes and pies and stuff like that for Winfred because she wasn't able to do it without a mask. So that's why you see this is the setting of their kitchen, and he did a picture of her with her mask on. That's what he remembers. When she would ever cook and use flour, she would have to put a mask on because she was allergic to it.
Yeah, this painting was made in 1998, so it's quite early. Looks like there's less color in this particular painting than some of the later paintings, which we'll get to, which have phenomenal kind of range of color, but just the details of the apple jelly, the apples, the apple jelly, the cider, the grape jelly, the pickled peaches. Looks like syrup, honey, plum something. Yeah, lard and
Plum
rice.
jelly.
Yeah,
Those are the types of things that we can
right.
during the summer months when these things was ripe. You would can them.
Right. So these are some early good time familial pictures, and then we're gonna move over here to a painting titled Wilson Brothers.
Yeah. Now the Wilson brothers was three white guys brothers who owned this store. And most of the black people come in to shop. One particular morning, Winfred and his mom came into the shop, and in the store to shop. And one of the Wilson brothers told her, said, Lillian, your grandson will never be a mouth or anything. He'll never be a damn thing. And ain't that right? And she had to agree. She had to say, yes, sir, Mr. Wilson. He'll never be a thing. He'll never be anything. And that picture stuck in Winfred's head. He was a young little boy, maybe about 7 or 8 years old, but he remembered that. And he carried that with him, that he'd never be a damn thing. He carried that with him for a long, long time.
I mean, I just want to point out he's so young that his head barely reaches over
Barely
the counter.
reaches up to the counter. So, and I thought that was a degrading thing to tell a young child at such a young, impressionable age.
And this was a white-owned store where I'm guessing 95% of the customers were black,
Well,
in
black.
a predominantly black neighborhood.
Yes. And he owned the store.
Right.
Now, this is a picture that Uncle did that he wanted to illustrate what the word meant, came to came. And he wanted to do it in a picture in a way that it would capture your imagination and you would have to ask him a question about it. And he did this side completely dark, and he did the other side completely dark. Because he wanted you to ask him, why is it that way? And it was because when you go to work in the morning, you can't see. When you get off from work, you can't see. So he called that picture came to came. That means you work until you can't see. You go to work when you can't see, and you get back home the same way you can't see, by the truck lights.
And so in this painting, Winfred is chronologically or from left to right, basically showing the endurance one had to have to work these strenuous, extremely long days, but getting out of bed at 4 a.m, making your way through pitch blackness to the cotton fields, and then working an entire day, having the sun come up, and then not getting off work until it's pitch black out, the sun going down and the moon being out, and then like you said, having truck lights on so that people could see their way out of the fields. So yeah, cane to cane was a long day, and I'm sure those long days happen often.
Hard day. And as he would tell you, there's no trees for shade.
Right.
Now, this particular picture is a picture of, I would call it relief, because it was a place that, one of the places that one could go and relax and have a little fun through all the miseries that he was doing and suffering through. This was a place of fun, and they call it the Curry. And there's a trestle that went across that particular water, and there was a waterfall behind it that fell into that particular hole that made it deep enough for them to jump off and swim and fish, and that's what they did. This was a place they went when they was playing hooky from school, or Winfred wasn't going to school anyway. So this was a comfort zone for him to hide from the work that he had to do. And the kids would jump off and have a lot of fun, and he loved that place. He loved that place.
Yeah, it also seemed like this was a great escape.
This was an escape for him because he was running from the cotton field. He was running from the abuse of the white man. So this is where he would come. And it was back in the woods, so nobody couldn't walk right up on him. And he could have a little fun. He get a little relief.
Right. This painting's titled Dinnertime in the Cotton Field.
Yes. And you'll notice that there's some buckets, and that's what the people would bring their dinner in. It would be in those syrup cans or either in a bucket, lard bucket. And they would sit on the cotton, which was in baskets, which they went to sheets, burlap sheets later. But at this particular time, he wanted to show that the cotton was put in the baskets. And you only got 2 cents a pound for the cotton that you picked. And he wanted to show that at dinner time, most black people stayed in the field and ate food that they had brought from home from the night before. So this is his picture of dinner time in the cotton field, one of his pictures.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the outfits.
The different colors, those we was colorful.
But my question to you is, might be construed as a strange question, but definitely something I'm interested in. Are you able to answer, were those that were working in the fields able to wear what they wanted? Do you know? Like,
Yeah,
it seems like they're in their clothes.
It is their
Right,
clothes. And
right.
whatever they decide to put on the next morning, that's what they wore.
Right.
And if you wanted to wear blue, you wore blue. It was no uniform
Right.
for them to work. So whatever they chose to wear, that's what you see.
Yeah, just the details and the colors of the blouses and the dresses and the belts and.
Now, they weren't trying to match, believe me.
Right.
But it just so happens that this is the way Winfred wanted to portray the colors that he remembered
Sure.
from the cotton fields. And they were very colorful.
And this is an early painting that Winfred made in 1999 titled Civil Rights, I Have a Dream. And do you want to talk about Winfred being an activist and going to these rallies when he was
Yes,
in his early
when he
20s?
was young, this was during the time Winfred he was in the army, he was drafted. Ask me how, I don't know, but they drafted him. And he had just completed his training. And they was given a sit-in for Charlie Hopkins. And he wanted to take part in that march. And he thought it would be a good idea, so he joined that particular march, which he had participated in before, different marches for different reasons. But this particular one was about Charlie Hopkins. And Charlie Hopkins had shot into a crowd of white people and killed the boy in protest of white guys shooting into a crowd of blacks and killing one. This was the protest to get him out of jail or get him some type of justice.
And unless I'm missing something, it seems like a very peaceful protest.
Well, that's the way they start off. On the black side would be peaceful, but you got to come up against an angry white mob. You're coming through a town that know what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not going to end peacefully.
Right.
Now, this is the beginning of him displaying and trying to depict the dogs that they would turn loose. The state patrol would turn loose dogs on you. And this was the start of when things got out of hand. They started getting out of hand at this point.
So the dogs were brought in to use
Yes.
as scare tactics?
Yes. It uses a way to get you off the street.
And fire hoses.
Yes, fire hoses, which he didn't put in this, but he has some pictures that depict it. He started with a few things and he went on and got bigger.
Shall we move up to the second floor?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a painting called The Getaway.
Yeah. This is a picture that he was running for his life. These two guys was coming out, and this is in Americus, Georgia. He was running down the alley, and these white guys was running behind him with a gun. He noticed that the car in the alley had the keys in it. He jumped in this car and he took off. And he did that to save his life, because they were shooting at him. That particular picture depicts that scene in his life.
Running from a white mob, jumping in a vacant car with keys in the ignition, because it was a small rural town.
Yeah, well, at that point in time, people didn't lock their cars or doors.
So trying to save his life, and then this was the primary reason that he spent over 7 years in prison.
He spent 7 years in prison, 9 years behind bars.
From stealing a car.
That's part of it, not all of it.
Right.
That's part of it.
Right.
I always tell people to read his plight so I can explain why he wrote what he did.
Do you have your glasses on? You want to read it?
I'm trying to tell my story as it really was, act for act and word for word. That includes using the word nigger. Isn't an ugly word, ugly. It is ugly. I understand that the word written flat out on the page may hurt some people. My hope is that they will come to understand why it's there. My story will not be as clear if I block out the word or even change a single letter. A substitute does not carry the same effect. To me, that means it isn't the same word. I've got to use the word just like I've heard it and said so many times in my life. Winfred Rembert. Now this is when his real trouble began. He decided that he would stop. He had been in jail almost 2 years with no charges, no opportunity to get a trial or to say why you're here. And he decided that he'd roll up a roll of toilet paper and stick it in the jar so it would run over, and he flooded the jail. And the deputy sheriff decided that, I'm gonna go back here and beat this nigga's ass because he shouldn't have flooded the jail. But you notice he's got the gun in the cell with Winfred. And reason being, he was not looking for no retaliation. They was used to beating up black folks, and you don't hit them back. You just take the beating. What was say after the third kick, he just couldn't take it no more. And he decided to fight back. And in the tussling, he went for his gun. And after he went for his gun, Winfred grabbed it, and he managed to take it away from him. And after he got the gun, he had to figure out, what can I do? What should I do? So he decided he'd lock him up and let out whoever else was in jail, let them out, and he took off. Now on his way down from the jail, the house that the deputy sheriff lived in was connected to the jail. His wife was coming down. So Winfred said when he saw her, he knew he couldn't touch her. So he ran by her, and he said she stepped back, and he ran by her, but he was in the police car. He ditched it, but they caught him. And this is the first ride that he took after they caught him. Put him in a state patrol car, and the police that was on the passenger side slapped Winfred in the mouth, and his blood got on him. So this is to go back to explain about that N-word that no one seems to understand, that he has to use that word, and to tell you how they felt about it. When he hit Winfred, the blood splashed back on his shirt. He took off his shirt to smell and threw the shirt out the window and said, I got nigger blood on me. And he didn't want that. But that was just a touch of what happened. Now this picture is a picture of Winfred trying to display what he saw. They had put him in the trunk of a car. They had beat him senseless. And in this trunk of the car, when they opened up the trunk, this is what he saw. He saw the ropes in the background and all this mobs of people. But now on the way, this was a ride. Winfred went back almost 35 years ago, and he closed his eyes, and he followed the steps within his mind to take him back to where he thought they had him. And he ended up to a place what they call Pondless. And it had up a big sign, no trespassing. He said, this is where they took me. This is where they took me. That was his belief, that's where they took him. Because he trailed it back in his mind, and he took us to that spot. Now, this is what he saw. This is what they done after they took him out the trunk of the truck, of the car. They was fixing to do their job. This is the deputy sheriff. He's got a hold to Winfred's private part, and he's gonna castrate him. Then they was gonna burn him. Then they was gonna hang him. And Lord knows what else. But they wanted his private parts because they was gonna put him in a jar and sit around and talk about we got on Winfred. But this guy with the wingtip shoes on stopped him. He had to be a powerful man to stop a mob that's gone crazy and bloodthirsty. He said, stop. We got better things we can do with this nigga. So he stopped them from taking Winfred's life. And this is what he meant by better things. This is some of what they meant. He took Winfred, they put him in chains, and they marched him around the square there in custody. So everybody could see, when you hit a white man, you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay dearly. And this is what they done. They marched him around. And then they took him to jail. And they took him before a judge that told him, I'm gonna give you some time, nigga. This is the judge. I'm gonna give you some time. He didn't really have no representation. He didn't have no lawyer to speak for him or say this is not the right way or what did he do it for and why. They just gave him some time. He never saw his papers to know truly what they was charging him with. He knew what they said they was charging him with, but he wasn't given it, and even if he had, then he couldn't read it. He couldn't read. So they told him they was giving him 27 years, and that he'd never hit another white man after the time they was gonna give him up. Nothing wrong about that. It was truly wrong. Now, we'll move on up. Now this is a self-portrait of Winfred that he did. And I said, honey, he said, well, I wasn't happy. So he did a picture, of himself.
I guess I'll just begin by, there's a phenomenal painting that we're looking at now titled All Me, and it's incredibly dense, and there must be 90 individuals packed into that painting, which is no more than 2 feet tall by 2 feet across. And correct me if I'm wrong, Patsy, but all of these men inside this painting are representing Winfred. Winfred had to be all me. All of those people are him. Yes. And how would you kind of go into helping people better understand what you meant by that?
Well, I had asked him, I didn't know how he started the picture. This picture's always baffled me. And I didn't know where he ended up. I just knew the finished product. And I asked him about the picture. He said, honey, I want you to look. Each and every one of these represents me. He said, this is what I had to do and what I had to feel like. I had to be all these different people in order to get done what was required of me within the run of a day. He said, so I did this picture to try to illustrate how I felt at the time. He said he had to be all of these people. He said, and that's why I named it All Me, because all of them were him. He had to take on a lot of different personalities in order to get done what was required of him in the run of the day. He said sometime when he would come in from work off the road, they had a line that you had to get in and take a shower and to eat. He says he would lay across his bed and be there for the next morning. He'd be so tired he couldn't eat or take a shower. So he'd have on the same thing that he went to work in the day before. So that's why he did that picture, All Me.
And then this tall and somewhat thin picture, I believe, is titled Picking Cotton with Boss Men.
Yeah, this is the show that the prisoners pick cotton to. And what he's trying to display, they got free labor, they got paid for cotton that was picked by the prisoners. Prisoners didn't get anything for it, but they had to do the same labor. And the boss men were the men that rode on the horses to make sure that the prisoners was working as fast and hard as they possibly could.
Yeah, it seems like they were always being watched.
Yeah, it was always watched. Now this particular picture in the center is a picture of how Reedsville in his mind was set up in the square in the center, and the prisoners working all around it. He put the bright colors in there so you could see through. This dirt on the line was red, so he wanted you to get a feel for the different colors of the sand.
From what I recall, Reedsville prison was a tough time for Winfred. I mean,
Morgan was worse, but he rebelled. He was not a model prisoner there, so they sent him away.
And I think you could tell us about the Gamages, Patsy's house. I'm guessing you probably know this place pretty well.
Yeah, that's where I was living when Winfred married me. Now, the place where Winfred walked up in my yard is not there. It was another house, and they moved the house since then. But this is the place where I was living when Winfred come to marry me. Now, the two guys that's got the tin tub with the water in it, those are my brothers.
These two guys.
Yeah, and the two girls that's hanging clothes up on the fence are my sisters. And that's me in the rubbing the clothes with the rub bowl.
This is you, Patsy?
That's me. And that's my mother who's pushing the clothes down. That's not food in that pot, those are clothes.
Wow.
She's pushing them down in the pot. That's my father sitting there with the axe that he's sharpening it to make sure they could cut the wood. And those pants, you would beat those pants so that the dirt would loosen in their mind, I don't know. But they would beat them. My mama would beat them with the stick so they could be washed. We had dogs, chickens, and turkeys, ducks, pigs. This is the scene.
That looks like there was a well.
The well, he wanted to make sure you knew we had to draw water. We didn't have running water. So that is the well where we got the water from. The bridge below our house had washed away. And they wanted Winfred them to come and fix the bridge. And Winfred walked up, him and another inmate, walked up to our house. And they asked, when he walked up in the yard, he said, "Miss," and I looked back and I saw it, and I took off and I ran in the house. And I told my father that there was a prisoner in the yard. My dad come to the door with his shotgun. He said, "What you boys want?" He said, "We just want some water. We working down here to get the bridge fixed so you can come in and out of your house." So my mother came up behind my father and said, "You boys working down there?" And he would say, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, come up here at 12 and I have dinner for y'all." So she started cooking dinner for him every day until she realized that Winfred had eyes for me and I had eyes for him, so she stopped. But from that point on, Winfred found out which bus I was riding to go to school, and he had a machine, they call it the pan. He would scoop up dirt, put it in the middle of the road where the bus had to come by, and he would get down, he would drop all that dirt in the middle of the road. The bus couldn't get by until he moved it. He would get off his machine and walk around the bus and say, "Write me, girl, come on, write me. I'm a stranger down here, I don't know nobody, come on and write me." And I wouldn't answer him, I just wouldn't say nothing. So finally one day, he kept doing it every day. The bus driver said, "Why don't you just tell him you're gonna write him, even if you don't, so he'll stop stopping the bus." So that led to him writing me. He found my address and he wrote me a letter, and from that point on, we wrote each other through the mail, but he was a secret. No one knew about me writing him and him writing me. And I would write him, I would take his letters, I would beat the mailman, I would beat my parents to the mailbox. I would get the letter, the bus ran at 3 o'clock, the mailman ran at 3:15. I would wait for the mail, get the letter, get the shotgun, go down in the woods and read it. And I would write him that night, and the next morning I would mail it at school. So he was a secret for a long time. Till one of the boys, which we had what you call suitors, one of the boys that was coming to see me, my grandmother lived over by the camp. I would go, and she was Seminole, and I would braid her hair, comb it, braid it, and ask her, "Can I go to the store?" And she would say, "Yes, baby, you can go to the store." I would go to the store, cut across the field, and come down to the road to go see Winfred. One of these trips that I made, one of the boys that was coming to see me picked me up. Well, he tried to pick me up. He caught me going, and he said, "Come on, get in the truck." I said, "I'm not getting in that truck." So he did a donut in the road, because one of them was running down the road to see why he was holding me up. And he went back and told my parents. And that's how they found out that I was writing. Now, my father said to me, he said, "I'd rather see you dead than to see you stoop so low." But I couldn't write with him no more. I couldn't go to see him no more because they was on to me. So I quit eating. And after a while, they decided that, what's wrong with this child? I couldn't eat. But Winfred wrote a letter that my father got. And I thought my father was reading the Bible one Sunday, but he was reading a letter that Winfred had wrote. And he had intercepted, because I wasn't going to the mailbox anymore, because I wasn't allowed to get a letter. And after he read that letter, he said, "Girl, put on some clothes." I still didn't know that he had read this letter. He said, "Put on some clothes, make yourself look decent." And I did what he said. He said, "Come on, get in the car." Him and my mother took me to the camp to see Winfred after reading that letter. He said, "I got to meet this guy. I got to see what he's about." And he told Winfred, "Those little houses, don't take my daughter in there." He said, "But I'll let her come see you." And that's how I got the opportunity to write Winfred through the mail.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and then this is a painting titled "Cracking Rocks." This was when he was in prison in Reedsville.
Yeah.
But then he was transferred to Lee State Prison in Leesburg, and then he was moved to Turner County Public Work Camp in Ashburn, before arriving to a prison located in Morgan, Georgia. So he was
moved around quite a
all
bit.
over the state. And then this is a painting that I find, what blows me away about Winfred's paintings is the size of the painting is irrelevant. A painting that is 10.5 inches tall by 9.5 inches across can pack just as much emotion, just as much power, just as much weight in it that a painting 8 times the size can do. And I think, and I know that that's a testament to the quality of the work and the work really being masterful. Would you like me to read it for you?
No,
Okay, I understand. Okay, yeah.
I can't read this.
So this is a painting titled "Almost Me." Right, Patsy?
It's almost me.
Almost me being
Hey,
many black men throughout all of the United States of America during this time and before, whose life was not spared. And yeah, I'll just read this, and this is a passage that comes from Chasing Me to My Grave, which is Winfred Rembert in conversation with Aaron Kelly, and it's a Bloomsbury Press book, and these are Winfred's words, and he says, "Thank God I'm alive, and while I'm still alive, I can talk about it. I can talk about surviving. I am history. I am a witness. I can tell about being almost lynched. And when I die, I didn't die by the rope. I just died from being an old man. I lived my life out. My children, when I'm gone, can read about it. And that picture will be there to speak for me. If you stand and look at it, the picture will talk to you. My great-great-grandchildren can walk up to that picture 100 years from now and say, that was my great-great-grandfather. He did this picture, and the story is about him. If I didn't survive that lynching, I wouldn't be here. There'd be no picture, no book, and no one to tell or read the things I've lived through and seen." Winfred Rembert.